What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to Fantasy Football League 2023. We are in Week 5 already, reviewing Week 5, let's just get right into it. Starting with the Wisconsin Weasels beating the Stunner Boys very close. The Weasels have been very dominant so far, but the Stunner Boys put up a very good fight. 165 to 147, very, very close. The Weasels now go up to 5-0, and the Stunner Boys now drop to 1-4, their fourth straight loss. Not looking great for them, but they might have something getting together here as they got very close to winning. Looking at the chart, it was so close, all the way to the end. The Stunner Boys actually had the advantage all the way throughout the game until the very end, where the Weasels just pulled it out right at the end, and Weasels got the dub. Looking at the stats, the Stunner Boys actually had a much better quarterback situation, with Jalen Hurts putting up 27, very good for him. And the Weasels not great with Patrick Mahomes, only 19, really not great at all. Josh Jacobs for the Weasels had 19, pretty good for him at running back. And then at wide receivers, Tyreek Hill had 32! Oh man, this guy is insane. And he put up a lot of points for the Stunner Boys, along with Cooper Kupp, who also had 20, and Jalen Waddle with 15, so really not terrible. But the Weasels, they had no one at wide receiver. CeeDee Lamb, Devontae Smith didn't do anything, and then Puka Nacua had 20, so he carrying the load there. At tight end, though, Sam Laporta with 19. He is going off. This guy is looking good at a young age, and the Weasels are definitely glad that they got him when they did. Kyle Pitts on the Stunner Boys, however, 15 points, not bad at all for a tight end. And then for another tight end at RYT for the Weasels, Dallas Goedert had 25 points. Oh my dear God, that is a lot of points, and he is looking dominant in the last two games. And nothing else on offense or special teams for either teams. On defense, however, the Weasels had Aiden Hutchinson with 9 points, quite a lot of points there, and really not really anyone else had points. The Stunner Boys actually had 2 players on defense that had a bye, and also their kicker had a bye. Clearly, they were just not paying attention. And then for the Weasels, I guess they also had Minkah Fitzpatrick, who had 8, but that's really it on defense. And now looking at the bench, a lot of players had byes. Almost all of them had byes for the Weasels, and they wouldn't have been able to improve anything with Quay Walker, who was on the bench, so they did everything that they could. And meanwhile, for the Stunner Boys, Breece Hall had 24 points. Oh man, that is a lot of points, and he definitely would have helped the Stunner Boys, and they would have won if they had him, as well as Christian Kirk. He also probably would have helped quite a bit, or even Damian Pierce, who had 9. Now looking at probably the closest game in the league this year so far, can't exactly remember a closer one. The Roydville Rhinos barely lost by 2 points to the Salt Lake Skiers, 142 to 140. Oh man, this was a close game. The Skiers go up 1 to 2-3, getting a bit of momentum back, as the Rhinos drop their second game in a row, falling to 2-3 as well. Two very different teams at the same record, but looking at the chart, it was silent for quite a while until they both spiked up, and it was actually more Skiers for a while until the Rhinos came back, almost won, but then they lost a few points, which sucks for them, as the Skiers just barely had enough. And if the Rhinos didn't lose those points, it would have been over and they would have won, but that didn't happen. Now looking at the statistics, Dak Prescott continues to be a terrible fantasy quarterback, and really just not a good quarterback in real life. 4 points, 3 interceptions, 2 rushing touchdowns, and only 1 touchdown passing. It was a terrible game for Dak, as he has been having a terrible year. Meanwhile, the Skiers didn't have a great game with Tua. 16 points, not great. He still continues to be really freaking good in real life, but it's just not translating very well to fantasy, probably with those 2 interceptions. But now, on running back for the Rhinos, DeAndre Swift was 16, that's pretty dang good. Derrick Henry had 9 for the Skiers. Now at wide receiver, the Skiers actually started Amari Cooper, who was on bye, so that certainly did not help them at all. And it was just a really boring game for the wide receivers on both teams. A.J. Brown, the most prominent player for the Skiers on both teams, with 18 points. And that's really it. Zay Flowers had 12 for the Skiers, and Jerry Jeudy had 11 for the Rhinos, but that's about it. Now at tight end, Mark Andrews continuing a decent campaign with 12 points, and Travis Kelce continuing to be absolutely incredible at tight end with 22 points. At RYT, DeAndre Hopkins for the Skiers, however, had 22 as well, and 15 for Raheem Mostert on the Rhinos, not bad as well. Kickers, nothing special. Justin Tucker only had 4. Jeez, man, I guess Baltimore is not putting him in a good position. Meanwhile, Evan McPherson with 10. And then on defense, Zach Sealer for the Rhinos with 12, along with Jalen Petrie with 12. And they could have had a DB, but they just didn't play another DB. And Zaire Franklin with 10 as well. And then for the Skiers, Fred Warner with 14. Oh my dear God, that is quite the amount of points. And he got them. And yeah, Skiers, they won. Now, looking at the bench, for the Rhinos, pretty much everyone was on bye, and the people that did play, Pat Farmouche and Nate Hobbs, had 0. So, yeah. And then for the Skiers, they did everything right, pretty much. I mean, Lamar Jackson had 10, but that wouldn't have helped. Jordan Hicks had 9, so that probably would have helped, but that's just about it. Oh, dear God. This is probably the biggest blowout that we have seen, as the Cheeseheads, the second team to not score 100 points this season, and it's pretty bad time to do that, as the Cobras are the best team in the league, as they won 184-97. Oh man, the Cobras going up to 5-0, still undefeated, and the Cheeseheads dropping their 4th straight game, going down to 1-4, just like the Stunner Boys. Not looking good for them. And looking at the chart, Cheeseheads didn't do anything until quite a while later, and when they did something, it wasn't good, and the Cobras just dominated the entire time, as Cobras looking dominant. Now looking at the statistics, Jordan Love had a terrible game. 4 points, that was horrible. CJ Stroud for the Cobras, not great. 14 points, really nothing special in fantasy. And then on the running backs, oh my God, for the Charlotte Cobras, Travis Etienne, 36 points. Dear God, that is an insane amount of points. And then David Montgomery with 20. Don't take anything away from him. He had a great game as well. And the Cheeseheads continue to struggle with Isaiah Pacheco, who only had 13 points. Yeah, not looking great for the Cheeseheads, as the Cobras just dominated. Now, at wide receiver, it was pretty okay. The one guy that held it up for both teams was Stephon Diggs, who had 25 points, which was pretty incredible for him. And then Justin Jefferson, who has been consistent 25-pointer, only scored 5 because he got injured. And the rest of the wide receivers really weren't great at all. Moving on to tight end, though, TJ Hawkinson, who has continued to be dominant, had an off day here, only 10 points for him. But George Kittle for the Cheeseheads, really the only good player, I'm pretty sure the only player that reached 20 points. 27 points for George Kittle, very, very good game for him. And meanwhile, Alvin Kamara at RYT nearly got to 20 points alone for the Cobras with 18. And then on defense, nothing special at all, really. TJ Watt had 10 for the Cobras, and Justin Reed had 10 for the Cheeseheads, but that's just about it. Now looking at the bench, this was very interesting. For the Cheeseheads, Kirk Cousins had 20 points. Oh my dear God, that is quite a lot of points, and really nothing else by anyone. 3 players had 0 points, but none of them had a bye. Very interesting. And then for the Cobras, they could have destroyed them even worse. Jared Goff with 27 points. Oh my God. That is insane. And Dalton Schultz with 19 as well. Incredible. And they could have gotten better, but not by much because they were already incredible. Now, for the final game today, it was semi-close in fantasy standards as the Cleveland Elves beat the San Diego Sharks. Elves looking good as they beat the Sharks 179-168. Pretty dang close, only 11 points. And the Elves' second straight win as they started 0-3. They are on the rise as they go to 2-3, just like many teams, as the Sharks drop one game to 2-3 as well. Two very different teams, but both 2-3. Looking at the chart, it was a very, very close game until a bit at the end where the Elves showed their dominance and started to rise a bit faster than the Sharks, and the Sharks just kind of slowed down. Now looking at these stats, this is a very, very good game for both teams. On quarterback, especially, Joshua Allen with 27 points, and Joseph Burrow with 23 points. Very good game for both of them. Oh man, first 50 burger, I believe, this year. Jamar Chase had 52 points for the Elves. Oh my god, that is kind of insane. He nearly had half of the Cheesehead score. Actually, no, he did have over half of the Cheesehead score. Wow, that is insane. All these guys down here looking small and puny. But then you look at the Sharks, and George Pickens had 26. That's pretty dang good game for George Pickens at a wide receiver. Pretty dang good. And then for the Sharks, also at tight end, Darren Waller with 16. Pretty decent. Actually pretty good. And then the Elves, RYT, Calvin Ridley, 20 points. Pretty good for him. And then nothing really special on defense. Bobby Okereke had 11. Pretty good for him. And that's just about it. TJ Edwards had 9, and Dre Greenlaw also had 9 for the Elves, but yeah, that's it. Looking at the bench, also nothing special for the Elves. 13 points for AJ Dillon, just not doing it. And that was really it on the bench for both teams. Now a quick look at the standings. We are having quite a bit of changes in the FFC, but the Weasels are not changing whatsoever. They are staying dominant 5-0. Number 1 in the FFC, Cleveland Elves moving up 1 to 2nd place in the FFC. Just 2 weeks ago, they were last place at undefeated, but they've been rising quickly as they go to 2-3. And then 2 teams falling, the Roydville Rhinos losing their 2nd straight game, going also down to 2-3, going to 3rd in the FFC. Meanwhile, the Cheeseheads, they're really looking bad as they are the worst team in this conference and the league. Now looking at the SFC, the Cobras still staying dominant 5-0. Sharks staying consistent, but they did lose, staying at 2nd in the SFC. But the Skiers, they went up 1 to 2-3 as well, and they're not ahead of the Sharks, which kind of confused me. I guess there's other reasons. But yeah, they are 3rd in the SFC, and the Stunner Boys going up 1 just because of how bad the Cheeseheads are, but they were still the same team. Both lost 4 straight, so yeah, nothing special there. And looking at the overall standings, Cobras, Cheeseheads not changing, still 5-0, and we have 4 teams at 2-3. A couple of them moving around though. 1 loss, 2 wins, 2 losses, 1 win. So really all the variety there. And then the 2 teams that are last are Stunner Boys, Cheeseheads, who have lost 4 straight total. 8 straight combined, which is kind of crazy. But that is going to do it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Or next week, I don't care. See ya.